Welcome to Watching Westworld, the officially unofficial podcast for Westworld on HBO. I'm Jim.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are here today to talk about Season 2, Episode 3, titled Virtu and Fortune. Let's just put it in English. Make it easy for everybody, myself included.
Yeah,
because I don't want to try to say that.
You hate speaking Italian. Long-standing prejudice against Italian people by Jim Jones.
I've tried to speak Italian in the past for various occasions, and it usually goes poorly. Virtu and Fortune, which I think is an apt title for a lot of the stuff going on in this episode, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah. Mentioned in the Instant Talk podcast, rather, that is referring to a Machiavellian lieutenant, that one should use one's talents and abilities to control life rather than let life or fortune control you. Mm-hmm. And we see a lot of the protagonists and antagonists are trying to do just that.
Yeah.
Are they going to be able to get a lasso around fate? We'll have to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it's happening on both sides. You know, this virtue is being exercised by both sides, and who's going to win out, I don't know.
So what'd you think on subsequent watches?
I liked it better.
Okay.
I liked it better once I could get beyond just how stupid that battle is, and I'm not going to harp on it in this episode. But
right. I'll harp on it a little bit.
First time through, I thought it was really dumb. Second time through, I was prepared for it, and I could kind of brush it aside and say, okay, what are they doing here?
Yeah.
From a larger view. And I think it was a little bit better when those concerns are gone.
Yeah. No, I mean, I still have a big problem with, like, the cold open and, like, what that means. And
I actually like that a lot better now.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I almost think, like, if it wasn't for this being a remake of Westworld, the movie, then we would probably want to start with the Raj.
Really?
Instead of Westworld, because it's much more a parallel for the robots than Westworld is, in my opinion.
How so? Just the colonial?
Yeah, that iron-fisted rule of the British over
versus the oppressed, and
exactly.
Privileged people coming in and thinking how civilized and how exotic and how nice it is, while it's built on a foundation of misery and
exactly. And when you think
unfairness.
about the Wild West here in the U.S., it was very much like the concepts based on freedom, right? And that applies to the humans in that scenario, but not to the robots. So the Raj seems much more of a parallel.
Right. Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. I still think so. The episode's fine because. The parts that are not fine, I'm content with letting, Joy and Nolan have their fun and tell the story they want us to tell in the style. Because I found last year, while it was frustrating sometimes in the middle of watching, everything paid off handsomely. So I'm going to continue thinking that, oh my God, these people just haven't forgotten how to write a show. They're actually doing something that we don't quite understand yet.
Sure.
Having said that, I do, like, every single time I watched the centerpiece of this episode, it just gets dumber, and it's hard for me to, like, almost both sides have to be phenomenally stupid, and, like, I don't know why both sides would be acting that way. And that's where it's like, and the thing is maybe this is like Nolan and Joy just don't care about the big action set pieces. They're more into care, so they just, like, they don't give a shit. Don't need military advisors. Don't need any, like, previous experience writing, like, these big, like, battle scenes. Like, we'll just go for broke on the special effects and make it look cool and have some awesome music. But man, yeah, I just have to really turn my brain off to just appreciate, like, in a very, cowboys versus aliens way, this thing, because it's just like, you're talking drones. I don't know why it didn't occur to me, like, helicopters.
Right.
Like a couple fast attack gunships, and that fort is smoked, and there's nothing they can do. Or, like, if you, but I know they didn't want to, like, one of the, like, you can't just nuke it from orbit because they got the Peter Abernathy. Right. That's the, like, why don't they use just, like, Hellfire missiles and napalm canisters and
even
tactical
EMP.
nukes.
It would extend to an EMP.
Right,
so.
But damn, there is a middle ground between marching into combat with dune buggies and a full-on orbital strike, and I don't know. So maybe I'll be super impressed, and this will all pay off, and it's like some kind of double, triple, reverse reveal gambit. But it's the centerpiece of the episode, arguably. Probably expensive as hell to shoot, and didn't hit the intended target of this podcast host anyway.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And that's the only harping I'm going to do on it.
I think the bigger problem I will have with it in the long run is if it doesn't remain consistent, because so far the Delos forces have been shown to be completely incompetent.
Right.
And that has been consistent across the board. So if they want to portray like this security force as unprepared for this scenario when they should have been prepared, or maybe complacent because this hasn't happened in 30 years, that kind of thing, I could get behind that. But once if they ever try to show me that, hey, these people are actually competent, I'm going to start to have problems with it.
Yeah, it's almost like, because I can excuse some complacency here, like
absolutely,
like if there was a full on, like, let's say that all of Mickey Mouse and his minions revolted in Disney World, and they had
Goofy's,
they had cybernetically enhanced strength, and who knows, and you had just Goofy ripping guests' heads off. Like, how well would the Walt Disney World security force be able to deal with that?
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. Someone might write in and say, actually, they have a fully trained team of ex-Navy SEALs, and they're like, I would believe anything with Walt Disney World. Okay, like maybe they do, but like, I guess if you had 35 years of an unfairly unblemished safety record, then maybe you do get complacent, because these are robots, and we can tell them the seesaw motor functions. How bad can it get?
Right.
So, but yeah. There needs to be a little bit more coloring in the lines, I guess, or filling that out. What else we want to talk about in Prelude? Oh, I've got something.
Yeah.
Turns out the opening song played underneath the heavy sitar track, Seven Nation Armies by the White Stripes.
No, I listened to it. I'm pretty sure it's not.
I have 75,000 emails informing me that, no, we are complete dumbasses. We got it wrong.
Absolutely. Here's the thing. We just didn't hear it. I think we were joking too much. Also, I was listening to it, and to really pick it out, it becomes very, very obvious when you have a subwoofer.
Yes.
And you can hear that solid bass line that you just immediately recognize. But we were watching it on a pair of fucking tweeters in there, apparently, because I didn't hear any of that.
Like I said, you know, when they throw us a curveball like Westworld, we were like making jokes. There were all kinds of and we were asking questions. Like, we're not a respectful audience when we're here in the Bald News studio.
We are not. No.
So yeah, first time watching, just didn't hear it. But it makes perfect sense.
Say?
Huh?
What does the song say about this episode?
I picked one of the 75,000.
Okay.
Rachel W. said, I thought you'd find this as fun, because according to this article that she quotes from NME magazine, which is like the UK equivalent of Rolling Stone, Jack White is famously afraid of a robot uprising.
Oh my god.
That's one of the excerpts from the article. They're writing about 7 facts you did not know about Seven Nations Army.
Next episode, we're gonna have Stephen Hawking wheeling around.
The album sleeve for Elephant proudly states no computers were used during the writing, recording, mixing, or mastering of this record, because he's like a technophobe and he's afraid of a machine uprising.
Doing it on reel to reel.
Pretty cool. I thought that was a nice fun time, and it might be just that.
Yeah.
And also, like, if Dolores gets a hold of all 6 parks, she's one shy of having a 7-nation army.
And if she gets hold of our world,
boom,
there you go.
Illuminati confirmed.
Yeah. Okay, let's get into the recap.
Yeah.
We start off with we're in the Raj.
Westworld trademark, where their real peacocks look fake and their fake tigers look CGI.
Okay,
because
I'm like,
they're like, because those peacocks in the beginning, they're probably not real, right? Are they real peacocks?
I have no clue. No clue. I've never seen a real peacock, so I couldn't tell you.
I feel like Westworld is like beta version for all their wildlife, because the elephants, I guess, were fine.
Yeah. Oh, they look good.
They're also shrouded in kind of jungly darkness, but like close-up shots of tiger and the close-up shots of peacock.
Okay.
Not sure about.
I had zero problems with most of the CGI in this thing. It was fine. But yeah, we're in the Raj, which I guess is the name of this park.
Westworld.
No, it's the Raj.
Oh, really?
Apparently, yeah. On all their marketing, we'll say, on all their websites and stuff. Like, they have the Discover the Raj, I think.
You really fucked up with your branding, man. It's world. It's always got to be something world.
Apparently, it's not though. Like, Westworld is the only world, I guess. I don't know. We'll see when
they sold
when we get the
name
world.
They're like, this isn't a world. This is just the West. And then they decided, okay, well, you got a point, and they started really confining. It's not Samurai World. It's just Shogun. I don't know.
It's everything that's dominated by the West. I don't know, because certainly the Raj is here. A man sees a woman from a balcony, and he approaches her, and they hit it off. And after verifying that he's human in the most, what's the word he uses? Extreme. I can't remember. They bang. Then they go on safari to hunt tigers, but they get attacked by hosts. and he's killed, and she's chased to the edge of a cliff by a tiger, which charges her. She shoots it, and she's knocked into the water.
Yeah, really, really far drop in that water.
Yeah.
Yeah, so a couple of things. Like, I just want to... Lots of theories that we'll get to in the theory section of this podcast at the very end of the podcast about this particular woman.
Okay.
But I want to talk to things about the things I noticed, or things I think you're supposed to notice. Are we sure of the timeline? Are we sure that this Rajworld character, or the Raj character, is tied into the current Bernard timeline? We think so.
I'm pretty sure, yeah, because of the tiger.
But we also have like Bernard kind of glitching and going through various versions of something very similar to this happening. So is it possible that this whole uprising happened before time?
I don't know. It's also possible that Bernard's glitching has an explanation within the 2-week period, which I want to talk about in the theory section as well.
I mean, they want us to think that they're connected because they made a big show of the security force finding the dead tiger. We see a similar, if not exactly the same, dead tiger in this episode. So it's probable, and they want us to believe that. Other thing they want us to take note of is she tested the guy to make sure that he was not a robot. She did not test herself.
That's true.
So it's still possible that she is a host?
It's possible, though she recognizes these humans and is visibly freaked out by it, and the humans who are killed in the tent.
Could she be a Bernard?
And she says she came in on the train.
Right.
Like, I was with him on the train. It's possible, but they're really misleading us purposefully, if so.
Yeah. Oh, no, I mean, but that wouldn't be the first time
of course,
that Westworld did it. So I just wanted to get the things out there we're supposed to notice. Also, the fact that this is all taking place on the edge of the park, and that you can see that, you know, what the edge of the parks look like. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah,
I got this laser gate system.
And how it just isn't doing a damn thing now.
No, it does seem like the whatever Ford did to the security system, combined with what Maeve did to the security system, has really fucked things up royally.
I do think the one thing that this show is trying to do with this woman, regardless of who she is, is give us some insight into the Ghost Nation. I think she's going to be the conduit through which we understand them and their purpose.
I like that.
Because she's being, you can see at the end of the episode, she's being taken.
Yes.
I assume in the same way that Stubbs was, and that was a big question in season 1. What did Ghost Nation do with Stubbs?
Right.
And he comes back so abruptly here and without any real mention of him being gone.
Right.
I think this is our window into that.
Okay. What else? Oh, the other thing. Fuck her notebook, right? Like the double hexagon code algebra. Like, I'm not engaging any brain power into that.
Okay,
like,
well, here's the interesting.
I will not do math for you, Nolan. I will not. I fucking won't.
It seems like she's clearly looking for something. She mentions early on that she's hunting. Basically, she says, you know, she's. I can't remember the exact wording, but he assumes she's hunting Bengal tigers, which. I'm not sure about that. I think she's there to maybe hunt something else, and this map kind of
she's here to hunt the Man in Black.
That. She could be, possibly. But there, man, I almost can't talk about this without talking about theories of who she is. I know,
and I was like, at what point do we bring in the ARG stuff?
Let me just say this: there's a theory that she is a QA worker.
Yes.
That she is very much like Elsie.
Yes.
And in that case, she could be looking for a stray.
Yeah.
She could, within the Raj, she could be looking for the Man in Black.
She hunting bugs, like literal bugs.
Sure.
Like
yeah. An animal got in. We need to get it out. Like,
right. Or just quality assurances. Like, is this up to snuff? Is like, it's, you know, at some point someone needs to go in and experience the park as a guest, which maybe explains why she's reticent to sleep with a robot, because she doesn't want her sex life for her bosses to be able to audit the logs of.
It seems like she's a little bit outside her job parameters. If she is in fact QA and she's going in there and fucking the hosts, like they're not cool when Sylvester pimps the host in the facility in the Mesa. So why would they be cool with her doing this? But I don't know.
I feel like do you know what a secret shopper is?
Yeah, sure.
So I feel like that maybe one of the important things of a QA is like to be a secret shopper. They just go in and no one knows that they're actually a Raj World or whatever Raj employee.
Okay.
A Delos employee, and you know.
But secret shoppers are usually
They're not.
Well,
yeah,
I guess they can be like internal quality assurance, but they're usually
people that are
spies.
Because yes, exactly.
They're usually going in and looking at prices of products.
So I was trying to make that's
service
exactly the example I was trying to say. That like, just because you don't want your horny techs fucking the merchandise doesn't mean you wouldn't pay someone to come in to do the same and give you an objective viewpoint on.
All you need is an exit survey.
How
man.
Good that host P or D is.
Fucking exit survey. Like you have people in there testing these every day.
Right.
Just ask them how it was.
That's true. That's true.
And I would think they would let you know when they're paying $40,000 plus a day.
Yeah, but then do you get bought because then they've got skin in the game, right? The whole idea of a mystery shopper is they're not spending their own money. They're just giving you purely objective, no axes to grind, no. Well, it's pretty good. I liked fucking the host. I don't know if I fucked $40,000 worth. Like, you got all that. Like look at any restaurant review on fucking Yelp. You've always got the fucking 1-star people that want to shit on everything. Anyway.
All right.
That's how mystery shoppers work, boys and girls.
Mm-hmm.
And fuck this person's notebook.
But it is interesting that she is meeting up with someone, like when this Jude Law's stunt double,
right,
sees her. She is meeting with someone else in this white hat and writing something in her notebook, which I assume is, part of the map or some clue as to what she's hunting.
Did Nolan hire Jude Law's lesser-known younger brother?
Oh,
we have a lesser Law. He's gone mad with his employing of less successful and famous of siblings of more famous and successful siblings.
I can't prove that that's not true. So.
it's unprovable, in fact.
So I do think this is an effective introduction to this character.
But that's the thing. It's an introduction of a character that I could give a shit about.
Well, we will come to give a shit about this character.
You have to give them runway or else they can never. But this is like, Feast of Crows dances with dragons. Like, all I care about is Arya and John and Danny. Who is this Hator? Like Hoto. I get him out of my face. I don't want. I get like. Can I skip ahead to the brand chapter? Like,
absolutely.
It's tough when you got people invested in a storyline too. And there's the Wire's problem too, because essentially every season's like, do you like the characters from last season? Well, fuck you. Here's a new set of characters,
a whole new cast,
and we might kind of tie them together in the middle of the season, but not. So it happens, and it's frustrating, but it's part of like stretching your mind open for new forms of literature.
But I do think this introduction is really efficiently written. Like the whole human test serves the purpose of immediately proving to her that shit has gone off the rails with these hosts in this park, right?
Right.
Because once, I think his name's Ganjo, is able to kill the person she knows is a human,
right,
that immediately tells her what's going on here.
Yeah, and the violent delights.
So we don't have to watch it all again,
Yeah, the violent delights of violent ends came back up too.
It does twice in this episode. Yeah.
Interesting.
Abernathy.
Yeah.
Also kind of riffs on that.
He's the OG of the violent delights.
I also like the Raj kind of defying our expectations. Coming out of season 1, everybody was looking at the Shogun World symbol, right, that we see in the background, and all of these samurai that are in the facility, and we're like, oh man, we're gonna get this Shogun World.
Well, keep watching.
And then the very first world they show us, New World, is not that, and it's like, oh shit, we just got a new world entirely.
Right, and we know there's 4 others we haven't seen.
Yeah.
So definitely sparks one's imagination.
For sure. Okay, we move on to Strand, Bernard, and company arriving at the Delos facility where Charlotte is waiting. She asks for Abernathy, but no one's found him. And then she asks Bernard, who flashes back to when he and Charlotte found Abernathy with the milk bottle gang. They hijack the leader and turn him into a kinder, gentler version of himself, who helps them get their hands on Abernathy. And then a group of Confederados rides up and takes Bernard prisoner, and Charlotte manages to escape. And she's running after Abernathy at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's, speaking of cool, I think the
payoff...
no,
she's not. She's just running away. Sorry.
The payoff of Rebus having his morality reset.
Yeah, this is good.
Makes, because like, a lot of people are like, man, how do you go from using women for target practice to shoot a woman over my dead body? Well, he just got hijacked by Bernard and reprogrammed. That was really cool. I like that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this kind of dialogue, throwaway dialogue. They talk when the mercenaries are kind of telling the in-charge guy like what's going on. They talk about multiple floors being on fire. They've taken out some place called the Cradle,
which is within the Mesa facility.
I assume it's got to be where new machines are born, right? Like, why else would you call it the Cradle?
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's like the literal machine that like dips the figures in the white milk or what, but I thought that's interesting. Also, the whole idea that they're putting Bernard deliberately through a loop, I think has little legs, because when Hale asks him a pointed question about, you know, hey, don't you know anything about Abernathy? It kind of triggers that stuttering mental breakdown, that nervous breakdown that he kind of has. And she's got a very knowing look on her face when she's saying it to him.
And she also says he keeps slipping away from us, which she
Yeah.
could very well be talking about
Bernard as this the thing is kicking away.
And I don't know exactly what's going on, but there's something fucky going on with Bernard that they're definitely playing with here.
Well, if you want to speculate with this, there'll be theory section at the end of the podcast.
Okay, sounds good. And we see that Abernathy is very concerned about getting to the train.
Right.
He's got to get to the train, which we later find out is Lee's approximation of a personality, which is I need to get to a train.
I also thought it was cool that when Abernathy stood up to the Confederados, he sang the battle hymn of the Republic, which I didn't know the history of this song, but this song was essentially an abolitionist battle song during the War for the Union.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, like if you look at it started off as the song was a very stirring song, but it's about you know, it kind of had some rough and coarse lyrics about this guy's body and moldering in the grave and all that, and some woman rewrote it to have this kind of stirring, like, you know, you're essentially doing God's work. You're stamping out all this bad and evil things in the world and military fashion. But yeah, like the Battle Hymn of the Republic was something born out of the American Civil War, which is thematic for the standing up to Confederados, but it's also emblematic of what the robot they're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Which is free themselves. But that gets complicated too, because man, I keep going back and forth about the whole consciousness of this.
Consciousness?
Yeah, like I'm kind of back on that. Not like I've been thinking a lot in these last few weeks about, like, if you had a Dolores in front of you, like, the Turing test is not adequate to really decide if something is human, right? Like, if it passes as human, because we're very easy.
I agree.
We're very easy to fool. Like, I feel like in the next 5 years, you might have a machine that can pass a Turing test via a keyboard, and you'd never know. Is it conscious, or is it just really programmed to act human well? And then the thing that really flips your mind is, at what point along the simulation of a human do you actually get a human? Like, if it's outwardly indistinguishable from human behavior, I mean, you're starting to get start to split some fine philosophical hairs. Sure. Because you're essentially offloading. If you say, well, it's not a human, I can do whatever I want to, you're offloading your sense of morality and ethics to someone that says, oh no, this is just a simulated human, which you're duplicating all the different prisoner experiments that have been done to various degrees of ethical standards and consistency. But like, it's a really tough question. I feel like I've been entirely too dismissive of they're just robot side.
Right.
I feel like it's the safe, ethical, and moral bet to be like, well, if it looks and talks and it's quacks like a duck and does like it's a duck. But
yeah, I think they're playing with those ideas in more detail, especially when it comes to like Hector and Lee later on,
right.
And their kind of the exchange in the underground tunnels.
Right.
Yeah, they're very much aware that this is not a black and white issue.
Right.
And that's why it's so. I guess A, that's why it's so important to talk about, and B, why it feels so icky when you do.
It's also the thing. It's like it's uncomfortably reminds us, because you start talking about like, well, how is it different from us? And like, well, first of all, we're not probably the only way that conscious beings can configure themselves, right? And also the fact is, we are kind of biological machines. That's an uncomfortable thought to think about. Like, I could shove an ice pick through your temple and you'd be a very different person.
Don't do that.
But you'd still probably be alive. I mean,
I wouldn't be able to podcast, that's for sure.
Maybe you'd be even better podcaster.
Maybe.
Maybe we should try.
I think we need to at least try.
We should at least try.
Irresponsible
Let's flip the coin and see who gets it. That's how we just solve everything here.
Sounds good.
All right, anyway.
Let's move on to the Colonel arriving at the fort, where Dolores convinces him to aid her in fighting off the impending threat of the humans. This is a really poorly named fort. Fort Forlorn Hope. Forlorn.
Yeah, we've got some feedback on that. Someone says that that's actually a military term.
Forlorn Hope
is essentially the term for the vanguard that there's like the tip of the spear of an assault that you know is going to die.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense in context.
And it's like so I'll let the guy explain an email, but yeah, it's a very deeply ironic name considering what happens here.
Gotcha. All right. I don't have much to say about that scene. So.
Fucking love like what they've done with Clementine, like reframing her from being like a sex pot character to like a horrifying zombie soldier is super cool.
No, it's fucked up.
Yeah,
she
the
drags
way she
that
just
guy
effortlessly dragged. And I know they've probably got all kinds of trickery, but like it's
Oh,
utterly
yeah.
sold me that she's just dragging this dude like he is a fucking tumbleweed, and just her kind of weird herky jerky effect. And
Yeah,
boy,
there's a lot of really good subtle effects work in this show, and in this episode in particular. Like I look at the Clementine stuff, and it is effectively horrifying what they've done to her, both practically, both with practical effects and CG effects, I'm sure. But then Abernathy has always been really creepy when he starts to kind of go off the rails, and the way his eyes twitch.
Right.
And his inhuman blinking.
No, the actor Louis Herthum is doing like I talked about this last year, but like I don't know what a robot that's losing its mind looks like, but I would bet it looks like this.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. He's so good, and Clem is so good in this scene.
It's very good. Also, the other thing that I'm kind of enjoying is how often the show itself finds ways to reframe its central thesis. Like here, you've got Teddy saying these men are animals versus Dolores as these men are children.
Mm-hmm.
Like animals are something that can never, without eons of time, become a person.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas children already are. They just need to be guided, and they need to be taught, and they needed to, and I thought that's interesting. It's a throwaway comment about, the morality and whether they can be used, but it's also, are these hosts like animal class that we can eat and we can hook up the tractor, like plow our fields for us and all that kind of stuff? Or are they children which shouldn't be put into sweatshops and forced to do labor and all that? I thought it was a nice little throwaway there.
I do feel like Dolores is a little schizophrenic when it comes to this, though, because
she is
at the end, like Teddy takes what she has said and uses it as a justification to release these people.
Right.
They're children. They're not animals to be put down.
Right.
And Dolores seems very displeased about that.
Yeah, and the way she's just coldly using them at various points.
Yes.
And some robots, it reminds me of Animal Farm, that there's some robots that are more equal than others, because not everybody deserves to make it through the valley.
Sure.
I don't know. And also, we don't know, since what we think is the valley gets flooded and hundreds of hosts die, that might not necessarily be a good thing to make it through the valley. Maybe the people that are dying along the way, she's actually saving in some perverse way. We don't know, because this is a game where the points don't matter. Nothing is real.
And we'll find out next week.
Yeah.
Okay, so Lee is very worried about the dangers of the park as they kind of make their way closer to where Maeve thinks her daughter is.
Lee looks like he's come down from the mountains to sell you some fresh roasted Colombian beans, right?
Yeah, he's
with that
towing
donkey,
the donkey, yeah.
Yeah, like he's
absolutely.
He's got the freshest of dark roasted Colombian beans, and he's very concerned that you buy them.
Yes. So he's talking about the dangers of the park as well as the security forces. They're going to be coming, and implores Maeve and Hector to turn back. They obviously don't, and they end up encountering the Ghost Nation, who really seem to want to take Lee with them. Maeve commands them to stop, but they don't obey. So Maeve, Hector, and Lee all run off to an elevator where they escape.
Right.
Into the ground. Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. This inability of Maeve to command these Ghost Nation members, what do you make of that?
I don't know. Because, again, all of the Native American characters we've seen throughout the series, they have like a weird fixation on humanity. They have like almost a religious fascination and awe of them as these outsiders. They're incorporated into the real life religions of these Native Americans, the host programming. It's funny because like this Ghost Nation equals the good guy AI something theory has really exploded on internet on the Reddit this week, which is odd because I've taken so much from Reddit. And I don't know if I'm the first one to suggest this. I just know I was doing it a couple weeks ago, but I do think that we're supposed to understand that they're different, and the evidence they're like they have menaced 3 different humans by the time this episode's over, but we know for a fact that one of them was not harmed or was returned as a host. So we don't know anything for a fact.
But we do also...
But they want us to think, oh shit, these Ghost Nation guys are coming for the people.
They look terrifying.
They are. They're like...
But they seem to be... Paper tigers is not the right term, but they are unwilling to harm hosts, or humans, rather.
Right.
They don't harm Maeve, Hector, or Lee.
Right.
They don't, as of yet, harm... Like, they had the drop on them. They could have easily killed them if that was their goal.
Sure.
They could easily kill this woman who washes up on shore. They could have killed Stubbs. They apparently
And if they were
didn't.
just following their programming and they can't tell host from human, why wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't this fearsome tribe destroy any of the cowboys that they find?
Yeah.
Like, that's the whole point. They're in this pitched kind of frontiers war. So yeah, it's there's a lot of questions which we'll delve into and more into the theory section of the podcast.
Okay. Anything else on that scene? I do like Lee's liquid courage here that Hector suggests. That's pretty good.
Yeah, he's just bogarting a whole bottle if you let him.
Yeah.
He's that kind of guy. It's funny how Hector holds these guys off with essentially some words and shots to the ground. Like, I don't know, man. I guess he bought them just enough time to get into the elevator, but I thought that was interesting.
All right, so we go to the Confederados taking Abernathy back to Fort Forlorn Hope.
Forlorn Hope. I think that's the original Dutch, as we'll find out.
Absolutely is. In Dutch world, that's how they pronounce it. Teddy doesn't remember who he is, but Peter remembers her. And they reminisce about their old stories, and Dolores tries to bring up the war, but Peter malfunctions, starts talking about the train again.
Yeah, it's funny. As long as she kept him on the ranch, he was fine. As soon as she started talking about the veil beyond, piercing the veil beyond the world, he started losing his mind. I think that's intentional. Like, she could keep him in his reveries of the ranch and he'd be fine, but as soon as she starts talking gibberish, he starts talking gibberish.
Yeah, he seems to fall back into that old loop when he sees her, almost like a reverie in a way.
Yeah. What do you think about Dolores' pronouncement of Bernarnold? She's a little...
What do you mean?
Like she recognizes him, but also recognizes that he's not Arnold, but wonders if he's got any of his qualities. Like, I thought that was... that would be such an interesting... I guess it's like it would be if you met the son of someone that you knew very well, but you didn't know anything about the son, and you're like, I wonder if did the apple far fall from the tree, or there's... It must be weird as a host to see a host show up looking and acting like a person that you had a relationship with, but that could mean everything or nothing. And I don't know. I think that is the way. What I'm trying to say is the way that Dolores processes that information seemed like someone is off a script. Like, why, if she's just going through some motions programmed by Ford, why would she even have this kind of a side to herself?
Sure. Yeah.
But on the other hand,
I mean, it's hard to... I don't know. I find it pretty hard to argue at this point that Dolores is not off the script, but I know a lot of people still think she's playing Ford's game.
Right.
She's part of that.
I kind of think so. I do too.
But it's all based on just like the language she uses, yeah?
I mean, it's based on a lot. I mean, it's based on like the musical cues they're using. It's based on the language she's using. It's based on like the kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde nature of her flipping back and forth between Wyatt and her Dolores constructs. Maybe she's not totally on the script, but maybe this programming is, it's not like Ford got a chance to debug this shit. He like set this thing in motion and pieced out. So it could be that he intended her to be off the script and she's not, because of the complex interaction between the code he injected and the reverie system and all this other stuff.
Speaking of her flipping back and forth between Wyatt and Dolores, there's something interesting happening in this scene where Dolores is very fondly remembering her time on the ranch.
Yes.
Which, man, Wyatt would not fondly remember that at all. A host set for vengeance would not have fond memories of that time. They would view that as part of their subjugation. And it's interesting that she does here.
Yeah.
It kind of shows that, you know, she still does see a little bit of that beauty in the world, and that she had a piece of that in Westworld. Like maybe it's you know, she's yearning for a time where things were simpler,
Yeah. Right.
as people often do.
Right.
Or maybe it's something where she is literally slipping between personalities here.
Yeah.
But it is interesting that it's not all bad. She doesn't view everything that has ever happened to her as evil.
Yeah. Don't you also think that some of this is supposed to call, like, you're supposed to see an analog between Maeve's longing for her daughter, who she has very strong memories of and feelings for, but she knows is not real, and Dolores, you know, yearning for the simpler time with her father, which she also knows is not a real thing and is a completely artificial construct, probably even better than Maeve, because she can see the illusion, like her father slipping between all the different characters he's been.
Yeah.
I think you're supposed to understand, again, that they're trying to show these people as the same with contrast, right? They're wanting the same things, they have a lot of the same motivations, but they're also subtly different. And I don't, again, know the full picture here, but I think in addition to all the things you're saying, that you're supposed to understand that, yes, she's a shadow reflection of Eve, or vice versa as well.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Unless you want to talk about Teddy and him not remembering Peter Abernathy, which I think is not as interesting as I thought it was the first time around, because there's a pretty obvious reason.
Right.
He's just been wiped since then.
Right. And yeah, like there's got to be some kind of code where when you replace an asset with another asset, all the hosts just kind of get on board with it.
Yeah.
Because
It's that
otherwise
mesh
you'd be
network
like,
we're talking about.
you know, when they replaced fucking who's the woman got her arm ripped off, so badass, Armistice. When they replaced Armistice as a sheriff, everybody come into the show, well, you're not the sheriff, and then, you know, that's a mess. You can't
How
have
do you
that.
get to be the sheriff?
Right.
You killed 100
Sheriff
people.
used to be a pretty blonde girl, now you're a fat ugly walrus. Pow pow. Like it's not gonna work.
Harsh.
Gotta be
Harsh. For a beloved character actor. Harsh.
Wait, the sheriff is a beloved character actor?
Oh, yeah.
Was he really?
Oh, yeah. I've seen him in many things. I can't tell you his name.
Well, you know, walruses need work in Hollywood too.
I guess so. All right. As they walk the underground passages, Hector and Maeve begin talking pretty familiarly. And Lee recognizes that they have developed a romantic relationship, which he considers impossible according to the narrative he programmed into them. Hector insists that Lee doesn't know who he is until Lee sort of proves it by quoting his words before he's had a chance to speak them. Then they continue walking, and Maeve correctly deduces that Hector was meant to be the person Lee always wanted to be, and his love, Isabella, reflected Lee's own love, whom he had lost.
Fucking Mary Sue's, am I right?
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
I thought, yeah, there's a lot of interesting things going on here. Number one, Hector saw that Maeve recognized the warrior from the time when she killed he killed her daughter, quote unquote killed,
Yeah.
quote unquote daughter, quote unquote warrior, all the quote unquotes. And then, you know, Hector has these very real concerns. Like, okay, let's say everything happens, we find your daughter, we protect her, then what? And she says, well, I want to move out to the real world. And Lee calls bullshit, which I think the way this is structured, you're supposed to identify with Lee, and like you're supposed to have all the same concerns that we would watching this. Like, well, how the fuck are you going to take on a planet with 7, 8, 10 billion people on it now that have nukes and spaceships and star bases, and they've been to the moon? You don't even know what all the How does that exactly work? But then he makes the exact same shape of an argument to say that these people are not in love, which it sounded a lot like, you know, someone, as soon as the Wright brothers land in their plane, coming and being like, you can't fly, it's all like, we're heavier than air, like, well, how the fuck can you be flying? Like,
Yeah.
if you're gonna, this is the thing that's sticking, the fact that these robots think they're in love. How about the fact that they've slipped off their yokes and they're running around calling the shots now? Like,
And killing humans, something you explicitly programmed them not to do.
so since we know, so I'm working through the inverse logic that I think Nolan and Joy are doing. Since we know that the latter argument is ridiculous or silly or short-sighted, doesn't it make, like, are we supposed to like know that the first argument, that it's impossible for the humans to take over Earth, is similarly ridiculous? Just because we don't know the plan or we don't know how it works doesn't really matter, because it's happening right in front of our eyes. I don't know. That's what I was thinking as I was watching this more.
Yeah. I also like, you know, how much they're comparing humans and hosts here. It's obvious, but I feel like it bears talking about, and especially when it comes to like how much of a human being is the experiences they have. Like
Right.
Lee have been in a different timeline Hector?
Yeah.
I don't know. That seems like a stretch to me, but it also seems
Well, look at William.
surprisingly possible.
Right.
And the idea that he would instill in this character what he would have as his best qualities and his best life, essentially.
Right.
Is interesting because that's essentially what Ford is doing as well.
Right.
Yes, I mean he's creating something to evolve the human species, and Lee has, through his narratives, kind of created a better version of himself in the narrative form.
Right.
I just like how all that ties together.
No, I think it's real strong too, and similarly, I think the story behind the story here with all this is there's not black and white. Like I think Hector wants to say you don't know me at all because I'm a woke robot and I'm no longer Hector, and you think I'm still Hector. And Lee says, yeah, but I don't not know you, dude. Like half the stuff you're going to say I can predict because it's in your. So I think there is a little bit of truth in both of those, is that the robots are going to be able to surprise and, maybe throw to curveballs to humans. But like, there's got to be a plot line where the humans know their knowledge of the hosts and their, core behaviors in a way that the hosts probably are not even fully aware of, to kind of the Shanghai
and in the very way they know themselves, right?
Yeah.
As much as humans know humans, they will know hosts.
Right.
Because they can't be anything but a product of what we are.
Now that goes to the next stage,
at
which
least
is
currently.
If they're a super intelligent AI, we might not know shit. Like we might assume that we know what the human experience is, but they're already behind that. It's like, if you had a spider with human level intelligence, is my go-to analogy. Like, what would that spider want?
Right.
Would it be concerned with compassion? Would it be concerned with exploring
more
the universe?
More legs, I think.
You don't fucking know, because what would that's a completely alien consciousness that you're now giving human equivalent intelligence to. So, yeah.
No, it's fascinating, I think, and the way that they're subtly bringing up all these topics.
Right.
Is brilliant.
Now, before we move on, I know we talk about the scene a lot. She talks about Lee writing a version of his lady friend and a version of himself he wanted to be, and she says it's ridiculous. But then Maeve paused and says, "So is holding hands. Come to think, is that her kind of like getting up another rung? Like, oh shit, I'm falling back into the things I'm supposed to be doing. This is stupid. I'm a machine holding hands with another machine that doesn't know who he is. Like, this is dumb." It's
possible. I took it more innocently, like holding hands is an inherently stupid thing. Like, what does it mean?
Yeah, why do we do that? Why do we
questioning
kiss? That's
that?
crazy. Yeah. Like anything other than literally sticking your genitals together is kind of unexplainable, right? Like that propagates the species.
That's the
we
act
get
of
it,
procreation,
but holding hands, kissing, cuddling, that stuff, like,
Sure, which is kind of fitting that they open with peacocks. Because that's essentially what peacocks are in a nutshell.
Right. Just
it's like the mating ritual, the dance,
Right. Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Bernard he's taken to a tent where Dolores meets him, and she takes him to see Peter and asks him to help Peter. Then she tells Bernard that she wants to dominate the world and realizes that Bernard has never been outside the park.
She asserts that. He does not confirm it. So
true.
I don't know that matters, but
true.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole lot of high-minded stuff here. There's a whole Bernard's line to her about I'm just an object with a role to play, just like you. Her talking about dominating the world, in contrast to her giving Bernard the choice to help her father or not. Like, it's just an honest request. It's not a demand. The whole beauty in what we are. She contrasts the people on the outside who are like survival experts and they're fighting death and that's the thing they can't win against, versus us who we got that by default. We're struggling to survive. That's the part we have nailed down. I thought that was interesting. I'm not sure where it's all going, but I just wanted to kind of shine a spotlight on some of those themes.
Yeah,
a lot of duality this season.
This is the scene where Dolores, I guess, realizes that. Hold on. Hold on. What was that all about?
Mail.
Oh,
I don't
okay.
know why. Like the old guy just used to slip it under our door.
Yeah.
And that's like it's
Kinda
very
like the old
important
guy.
that I got I got the progressive spam insurance spam directly handed to me.
Yeah. Maybe it's a summons. Maybe you're gonna open it up and it's a trick on
Bald Move is being sued by Progressive for some reason. Did you hit and kill someone, Jim?
I didn't want to tell you about
In a
it.
Bald Move vehicle, which there are currently 0 of.
Yes.
Have you illegally registered a Bald Move vehicle? All right.
Oh shit! I've been caught. I forgot my train
You're
of
literally
thought.
the only one of us who's bought in a car in the last decade, so you're a prime
That's true.
suspect.
That's true. Okay, let's move on to Maeve and company finding a man on fire running down the hall. This is a really horrifying scene.
It made me laugh in the
exciting.
same way that like Invasion of like the Mars and attacks, like with the herd of cows coming over just on fire out of nowhere.
Yeah,
Like
no,
a guy
it's
just
funny.
pinwheeling his arms, screaming down a empty hallway on fire is, I don't know, triggered my laugh reflex.
And he is pursued by a flame-throwing armistice who is, pun intended, fully armed. She takes the group to Felix and Sylvester, who she has tied up and grenades stuffed in their trousers and shit. And they all head back to the surface. This is a good scene. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, totally. I liked seeing Felix back. The other guy, not so much. I don't know that. It's interesting that Armistice, her name literally means like a truce between warring factions.
Yeah. She very much seems to be defying. It's an ironic name.
And you got Teddy Flood. Well, but like I'm just wondering
Seemingly,
if
so
she
far.
will somehow be the. Like, I don't know why, because she seems like she does. She's not. She's a woman of few words. She doesn't seem like she'd play the peacemaker. But just pointing out, I wouldn't think that Teddy would be involved in a dying in a flood last season, and yet here we are. So the names of people mean stuff in this fucking show. Fucking aren't like one of the key like the Arnold being an anagram for Bernard. Like some of this stuff is so Harry Potter level dumb, but it works. And I'm just saying, Armistice.
Okay. Armistice.
She's going to end the war between the robots and the humans, or the two robots. I don't know.
Masking a big encrypted file. He tells Dolores that they won't stop coming after her as long as Peter is around. She says, bring it on.
Them come.
Bring it on. I don't know what else to say about this. He's hardwired in to Abernathy here.
Yep.
Same way we've seen him hardwire into other hosts. And there's a lot of speculation going on about Bernard and Abernathy, which has to wait till the theory section. So let's move on to the underground halls, where Charlotte encounters a security force, and she proves she's human and then commandeers the force to attack the fort. Anything about this underground scene?
No, I mean, I just try to repeat the stuff we said on the instant talk, because I know, just based on traffic analysis, not everyone that listens to that, or more people listen to main. So the thing interesting here is they scan her neck, and I hypothesize that they're scanning for the presence of that explosive cervical disc.
Yeah.
And when they do that, it makes like the stereotypical like denied like noise when they scan it. So I guess, and I also said that like look for the only robot we know doesn't have that disc in her spine, or at least we have strong suspicion to think, because who knows, they might have put it in there and just lied to her, is Maeve. So you can see,
spoiler alert, happens to be running around in the underground halls right now.
right? So like if she's wanting to get out of Westworld, and I don't know how she could bring Hector, her little girl, or anything like that, but like I think it's entirely possible she could just come up and they'd scan her and she'd just be let go.
Yeah. Seems like it.
So that's one escape vector for a host on Westworld.
Yeah. Okay, we go to the fort. The scouts are returning, and they're warning of forces coming up from the ground, which I think scares the shit out of that host. Dolores plans the defense of the fort in conjunction with the colonel here, but she seems to really be in charge.
Right.
Of everything.
They also mentioned that they have mined the field in front of the fort with explosives, with TNT, which will explain a little bit of Dolores' goals here.
Yep. I guess let's keep moving. This whole like series of scenes here is just the end of the episode, basically. So Bernard cracks this encryption that he saw on that file, and he's shocked by what he, and I emphasize only he, sees. They very much hide it from the audience here. What the hell?
All we get is his reaction and him saying, OMG.
Oh my God. What is it? So here's the thing. Here's what we know about Bernard. He already, at this point, we think, knows about the DNA and experience collection that's going on in Westworld.
Right. He's a smart person.
Right. So,
Smart host.
And that is what everybody is assuming is in the file. And the code for Westworld itself, right? Like code that runs the hosts. It's got to be something bigger than that Bernard is seeing here, yeah?
Yeah.
To actually shock him?
It's got to be.
I would think so.
But what is it? It's the prime function of the park. It's the thing that's like it's the game behind the game.
Seems like the game behind the game. Like, what is management up to?
Right.
And this seems to be immediately recognizable as
something that would make you say OMG if you're a host that has been exposed to already some of the games behind the game. Yeah, no, I don't know. That's we'll probably find out somewhere between episode 9 and 10.
Probably. Okay, so the attack on the fort begins, and it's just a distraction. And Dolores sees Peter being extracted out the back. She's too late, though. She can't stop it. Charlotte escapes with Peter Abernathy, and Bernard also tries to escape, but Clem knocks him out and drags him away. And after betraying and killing most of the Colonel's men who helped them, Dolores tells Teddy to take the rest out back and shoot them. Instead, Teddy lets them go, which Dolores doesn't like.
Yeah, I mean, I know we don't want to harp on the kind of pedestrian battle. The core things I want to talk about that I hope they resolve are the loyalties of this mercenary army that has limits. Like, they took some pretty severe losses. Why are they, like, it's one thing for, like, if you're a national army and you're told to go somewhere, you trust that hopefully your democratically elected leaders have got your nation's best goals and hopes and ambitions in mind when they're sending you off to die in this fucking godforsaken rock. If you're a mercenary for a company, you could be dying for the shareholders' equity stakes or whatever, and I don't know that really moves the same emotional needle. So are we going to see, like, some pushback between, like, you know what, fuck this, let China deal with it from the mercenaries? The other thing I wonder is Dolores made it seem like she needed these Confederados to fight the full 800 men, like they're going to mass on this beach. But this was not that. This is not 800 men and women.
This was like 50.
Right. So why did she expend literally all of her non-white forces on that battle? Why wouldn't she keep them around? I don't
know. She says she's headed to Sweetwater. There's something in Sweetwater that she needs.
But that seemed like as a response to their stealing his father.
Yeah.
But, like, again, the whole plan was for all the Confederados to die. And
I mean, it could have changed her plan. She could be improvising here. Like, okay, well, they've got Abernathy now. I know there's something big in there because Bernard told me about it. Although he didn't really have time to, did he?
I don't know.
He told her about the encryption, but he didn't tell her that he broke it and what it was.
And here's the thing, like, I personally feel like some of this is going to be revealed in the fullness of time as kind of bad filmmaking. Like,
it's possible.
But because they're like, that's certainly possible, but also it's certainly possible that they're doing exactly what they're wanting to do and we just don't understand it. But you just have to explain holistically the human's behavior and the host behavior for that reveal to not be dismissed by me anyway. And I hope they do that work. Otherwise, you know, I've done this in other shows. Like, well, it's just this is an off episode, but the core of the story is intact. It's not like it jeopardizes like the entire It's just like, man, and just little things because, like, for example, there's like 30, 40 guys pushing on the outer gates to get in, and then there's a scene of the Wyatt forces like barricading the door, and like simultaneously all the guys bracing the door just leave the door and 3 guys put this wooden, like, in reality you couldn't do that. The door flies open as soon as, so it's like that I think is just going to be bad filmmaking.
It is and that's why I wonder, like, to your point about, you know, the Delos forces, security forces losing faith in their commanders and abandoning. I don't know that they're going that direction. I don't think that's a consideration because they might literally within the narrative structure of this have an endless supply of goodwill toward their their
Could be,
bosses.
or maybe they hopped up on future drugs, or who knows.
Sure, but what I'm saying is I don't think that's going to be a consideration.
Right.
From
And as a reasonable
standpoint.
person, I also judging by feedback, which I cut a lot, because we're going to talk about this. It's something I think a reasonable viewer would wonder about.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I do think that's true, but I don't know that. I mean, maybe we'll see later on that does become an issue, but for now, they certainly haven't addressed it.
Okay.
I don't really want to talk much more about this battle. I think it's interesting that Charlotte has Peter Abernathy at the moment, which kind of leads into a lot of theories about different people and what she might be up to, but maybe we should save that.
Okay.
So we go over to the woman from the first scene, whose name we never get in this entire episode. She's credited, I think, as Grace on the IMDb pages. But who knows if those are right, or who knows who uploaded those. We're not sure. So this nameless woman from the first scene crawls up on shore next to the dead tiger, where the Ghost Nation are waiting for her. Very short scene there. We've kind of talked about the implications of most of it anyway. And then Maeve's group finds cold weather and snow, and Lee thinks they're in the Klondike narrative, but he quickly realizes he's wrong. They're actually in the Shogun narrative when he finds a severed head buried in the snow.
It looks like it's wearing samurai armor.
Yep. And he tries to warn the others, but a samurai charges them from the woods.
Or could be a ninja. There's a vigorous debate about samurai or ninja, which is like,
all right,
they're not mutually exclusive.
They are mutually exclusive to the cultures in which they reside, certainly.
Right.
But yeah,
they wouldn't pal around, but they're like analogous to, like, let's say like a Westworld's called Cowboy World. You wouldn't be surprised to find Native Americans. You wouldn't be surprised to find Chinese people working on the railroad.
Absolutely.
Like ninjas exist within the Shogun world, the samurai world. But yeah, they wouldn't like get beers.
No. Lee's. I don't know how to gauge Lee's terror at realizing where they are, because Lee is kind of a not, let's say generously, a not very courageous character.
Why would he be especially terrified of Samurai World?
So here's what I think. Samurai World is designed to be a scarier, rougher world. It's not that family-friendly zone that he's talking about.
Interesting. The whole place is just the difficulty turned up a notch. Interesting.
It seems like that could be possible, because we know there are different areas of the park that are designed to be, levels 1 through 10, levels 40 through 50, Man in Black only kind of zone.
Right.
That sort of thing. So I think he realizes that this narrative is tougher.
Maybe because the other thing is, like, Lee doesn't know shit. Like, Lee thought he was taking him to one place, and he winds up in a whole other park. And there's constantly mention of, like, well, Lee doesn't know, like, he doesn't know his way around. He's not really familiar with the park. He's oversold his expertise to Maeve, and like, so it's like he's an unreliable. He's on the surface an unreliable narrator. I'm not sure what to say beyond that. I
don't know, but I can tell you one thing. All of that snow we're seeing is going to be yellow by the end of next episode. All of it.
Yeah. It feels like Maeve is just going to freeze all motor functions on this guy, and that'll be that.
If she can. We've seen it not work on certain hosts.
Right.
We have our theories on why that is, but
it turns
we don't
out
really know.
The Shogun world is essentially the special forces that are called in when the... Oh, good Lord. Blew my brains out. Should have used the guest bullet in my nose instead of the host one. All right.
Yeah, could be. All right, that's the end of the episode.
It is indeed.
Do we have some feedback to do?
As you would imagine, we do. Westworld at baldmove.com is where you send this in. You can also discuss the episode with your fellow fans at forums.baldmove.com. Here we go. First up, sad, as usual, we have some feedback for the last episode we did and some new feedback. Let's talk about the early stuff first. Elena M. So this was in response to us kind of being incredulous that no one would know that Bernard looks exactly like Arnold, the founder of the park. She goes, there's the scene in episode 2 or 3 of the first season where they're walking down the street of one of the towns, and Logan specifically says, this place is hemorrhaging money. The legend goes, just before they were supposed to open up, one of the founders of this place was killed here in the park. I got our lawyers to look into it, and there isn't as much as a picture of him anywhere. The guy's a total mystery.
This is the problem. Like, they can say that all they want. I just have a hard time believing in reality that that is possible.
Yeah, but that's like I feel you.
Yeah.
So this isn't a diss, but that's
and I realize
you
the
and
show
me
is
problem.
trying to tell me
Right.
the exact opposite.
Right. Like,
I
you don't
just
understand how or
can't
why,
suspend
but,
my disbelief.
but we are asserting it as fact,
Yes.
and you either have to hang or not. So,
And this is the last time I ever want to talk about that subject again.
So Joel B. in 1990. Well, we'll probably revisit
Joel
season 3.
B. Is Joel B. talking about this?
No, he doesn't.
Okay, good.
But I'm just saying we'll probably bring, because like I think some of this stuff will just be perennial because people, like, I still have people ask me questions. Well, how the hell are the hosts shooting the guests with their blank
the
bullets?
bullets.
Like,
Yeah,
dude,
come on.
Yeah, like, you know, that's, go watch season 1. It's all there.
Yep.
Joel B. in 1990, there was a case, Moreau versus Regents of the University of California, brought before the Supreme Court that argued or discussed the legal implications of ownership of one's own cells and whether an individual has a property rights to those cells. Long story short, the case dealt with a man who was diagnosed with leukemia. As part of his treatment, the doctor recommended removing his patient's spleen due to its extreme swelling. The surgery was successful in stabilizing the patient's health, but thereafter the doctor began studying the spleen and found the patient's blood cells were unique in that they produced a protein that stimulated the growth of white blood cells. The doctor ended up patenting the cell line and making significant profit by
wow.
selling exclusive access to the materials and the research performed on the cell line and products derived from it to a genetics research firm. Unsurprisingly, the patient found that later and sued the doctor, claiming that his cells are his property. Just out of curiosity, where do you fall on this before I get to the Supreme Court?
I place very little value in ideas. It's about execution.
Right.
And this person essentially had what amounts to an idea within his cells that
he
this
was
doctor
himself
then
unaware of.
executed on
Right.
and was able. So I'm on the doctor side here.
Okay.
Frankly.
Well, good. Because the Supreme Court sided with you.
Okay.
So the court rejected the argument that a person has an absolute right to the unique products of their own body. The court also looked at the policy behind having a patient's cells considered property. The court's concern was that extending property rights to include organs would have a chilling effect on medical research. Laboratories doing research should not be expected to know or discover whether someone down the line had their samples illegally converted. Lastly, the court found that the patient's interest in his bodily integrity and privacy are protected by the requirement of informed consent, which must also inform about economic interests. Essentially, the court said the same thing you did, except for also you should, and all the different things you have to sign before you go into the hospital or have, you should also waive any rights to blah, blah, blah.
That's reasonable. Totally.
Needless to say, the idea that Delos would be researching the guest's DNA without their knowledge is not as far-fetched as one may think. Think of the last time you gave blood. Do you know where that blood ended up or who might have been studying it? Probably not, but you can bet that whatever you signed before and gave the collector the rights to do with your blood whatever they chose. It's obvious that Delos' plans are much more nefarious in discovering medical breakthroughs, but I do think it's interesting tie into the real world.
And we have seen the terms of use, essentially, of the park.
Yeah.
Which include the right to your DNA.
And we remember thinking last year, like, wow, that's really ominous, but it was paving the way for all the things we're seeing this season. So, yeah, there's not going to be, it doesn't sound like there's going to be any, like, legal challenge or moral outrage from this. So I thought that was interesting. Peter S., at the retirement party, the elder Delos says that he's running out of time, and William says things are progressing. In season 1, one of the tourists thanks the man in black, saying his foundation literally saved my sister's life. Also in season 1, Ford pontificates that humanity has conquered every disease. It seems likely that between the 30 years when William first came to the park and the present day that William/Delos created some sort of universal vaccine are the ones that cure all diseases in the world.
I mean, it's possible.
He also says, it's always assumed the Westworld took place in the distant future. However, now that we've seen the real world at the beginning of the park's run, what evidence do we have that the park isn't essentially starting in present day 2018?
No, we have. I don't think we've assumed that for a very long time, because we've seen in security footage an actual date.
So and
it puts the year at 2052, I think.
You're right. It was so Maeve, and this is only on the ARG, I believe, that they had like essentially you could log into the Delos website and you could look at security cam footage of Maeve's rampage, and it was dated June 15th, 2052.
Yeah.
Interestingly, if you subtract 35 years from that, you get 2018.
2017, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's 2017.
Which is the year that the show would have been.
Right.
Well, I guess the year after the show would
It's
have been
close
airing.
to our present day. So
Damn
you're
close,
like half right and half wrong there, Peter.
And it makes a lot of sense when Logan sees it that if it's like the year 2020 or something, he'd be like, we don't have this. We're not here yet.
Any of us would walk in that room and have the exact same reaction. So you got to understand that Delos is a quantum leap above anybody else in terms of technology. So yeah, I thought that was interesting because like I'd never done the math actually, because 2052 is one of those like, it's pretty far in the future, but it's not really.
No,
it's not really at all.
I'll probably live to see 2052.
I will probably live to see 2052.
Unless the hosts
less
take over.
likely than you because I'm a couple years older. But Bran M. I remember seeing Maeve in season 1 flashbacks, specifically when we see Dolores walking through as the staff are teaching host human behavior. Maeve is learning how to dance, and we even get audio confirmation from a technician saying, "Very good, Maeve." This was in response to how old is Maeve?
Okay.
Because there was conflicting reports. Now, the next question you got to ask is, are all hosts that we see in the original time frame, are they all still using their original bodies? We know Dolores is, but is she like? So we understand.
How do we know that Dolores is?
That's a great question.
Because especially with the introduction of this light bulb brain thing, you could very much say that Dolores is the oldest host, but
there was a line,
but it's just with her brain being
because I was gonna say there is a line in the first season where Bernard or maybe it's Elsie remarks that she's one of the original models.
But it's like a car, right? Like when you replace every part on a car, is it the same car?
Thesis,
Of course, the ship of Thesis.
I don't know. So the question is, what are the filmmakers wanting us to take away from the conversation? And also the opposite argument is, well, the filmmakers want us to take away a lot of things that they then subvert. So
sure,
there's a lot of like rules lawyers interpretations of this stuff. I just want to throw that out there. Maybe Armistice Funny Arm is revealing her actual exoskeleton, kind of, that she's not like the new meat-based robots. But so here's the thing. The thing. We know that Maeve has a organic body because it's rebuilt. We saw it rebuilt in the previous season.
It's true.
So she is certainly not the like erector set model. Maybe Armistice is. Dolores, and I don't know why I say Dolores is.
We assume because she's very old that she would have the same endoskeleton, but there's no real reason she couldn't.
She takes shots like it's nothing in this episode, but that could just be because she's turned her pain receptors all the way off or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question though. So we'll have to kind of pay attention to that. Because otherwise, like just because Maeve was there from the beginning doesn't mean she's got the old body or anything.
I do think it's interesting that they are able to gin up an endoskeleton arm for Armistice. That kind of lends some credence to the idea that those hosts are still operational, and that they would need parts to replace their old parts with, or they've gone to cold storage and they pulled an arm off.
Or what if they just pulled her arm out of the door and reattached it? You know, like you can do that with people. If a person's arm gets torn off, you get it to a surgeon fast enough, they can reattach it. So that's true. She hacked her arm off, but it's stuck in the door presumably. She could just take those tool bags back to wear it and say, "Put it back on, boys." I mean, that's the thing. Like, there's so many fucking things that could happen with these goddamn robots and their rebuildable bodies. Who knows? And especially now that you can swap your brain core. Katie, bar the fucking door, please. John G. So you seem to have a real issue with those park techs and remote diagnostic lab and not knowing that they're using a lot of the original Dutch pronunciation in this podcast.
Yeah, Sector 19. They don't know shit in Sector 19.
Just want to remind you a few things from Season 1, Episode 10. After Maeve has her new body built, she wakes up with Felix, grabs his tablet, and uses it to set Hector and Armistice to 0 pain threshold and heavy aggression. She then, in the same scene, deactivates some of the park security systems, and he includes an image of her doing so in the email. Later, see a shot of the control room, and everything is fine. The system is reporting no issues, but the guy has one of his operators go through and visually sweep each camera feed one by one, and they see Armistice rampaging and throwing a guy through the window. So I guess it's entirely possible that these people would not know anything because a combination of Maeve and Ford has essentially subverted every safety system in the fucking park.
Yeah. It makes me wonder if that wasn't, you know, programmed by Ford for her to be the thing that lets the hosts off the leash.
Could be.
Like, is part of that reprogramming of the security systems to take the restraints on the bullets off.
Right. We have this like dichotomy that like, oh, Dolores is Ford's, creation, and Maeve is kind of her own.
But
thing,
we know for a fact that
that
Maeve was on track. Was on a programmed loop here.
That's true.
To escape the park.
Right.
I don't know. It's interesting.
Donovan, I kind of disagreed with your analysis about Teddy. I'd imagine that when Ford reprogrammed Teddy, he would have been programmed to be loyal to Dolores, and therefore at the end when he disobeys her, wouldn't that prove that he's not on his loop?
I mean, that's assuming what Ford has programmed into him.
Right.
I really don't know.
And there's the other thing is, there's this article that someone forwarded me that we'll get to in the speculation part, but they brought on an actual neuroscientist as like the concept of a cognitive dissonance, and he described that as that the scene where Maeve was in the first season. This isn't a spoiler because he wasn't involved in season 1, but he mentions that like, she sees the choice, like she's got two drives. One is to leave the park, but one is her maternal instinct to her daughter. They're both programmed which one gets precedence.
Yeah.
Like, it could possibly be that Teddy is programmed to be a stereotypically heroic dude, kind of like the repurposed Rebus,
Yeah.
He's very gallant, and it's not that he's loyal to Dolores. It's just that he's got this, in absence of anything else, he's kind of takes a shine to Dolores, and he's a really good guy. But what happens when Dolores starts mass murdering people? It could be like, is he jumping his loop, or is the valiant, heroic aspects of Teddy taking precedence over the lover boy aspects of Teddy? Because not all those drives can be equal, or else you'd have the Star Trek idea of a robot where you could be like, everything I say is a lie, and their heads explode because they can't process it. You have to have a hierarchy, or just a, like there in race conditions with computers. Like sometimes you just explicitly say, after you've been through so many loops, just choose one and go through it, because else.
Yeah.
So,
and I will, like, we see that in Maeve when she is confronted with the reality of the situation. Her head nearly explodes.
Yeah.
But also Teddy could have like a multiple cornerstone problem.
Sure.
Depending on his access to his memories, he might have this cornerstone, his original cornerstone, which I think is Dolores and his love and some event that happened in the past, and his new cornerstone, which is Wyatt, right? And the murder, and now he like could possibly be seeing Dolores as both of these things, which is really fucked up, for Teddy,
right? And that's it. You think about they've kind of introduced with the idea of this cornerstone that there is something that would win all debates, like, between the robots. And if Maeve's cornerstone is her daughter, so that opens up to the other next level meta question of like, are these robots really consciousness, or is it just, or they're just reacting to really weird circumstances engineered by their creators, and it's. Just
the
can't
edge
tell.
cases, right? The edge cases in the programming.
Yeah, exactly. Because no one programmed these to what would happen if the creator decided to wipe out the park in a nihilistic urge to destroy all of humanity, because he himself was dying.
Yeah.
Like, it's not too late to dust off the Robert Ford is an asshole theory.
Sure.
That kind of got put on the shelf because we liked the robots and we liked them being free. Okay, Melody says, in Instant Cast, you had a conversation regarding Teddy's quote-unquote wokeness in relation to Hector. I've been observing Teddy's obvious hesitance and distaste for Dolores' methods in Season 2, and here's the conclusion I've come to. In Season 1, Maeve spent a fair amount of time helping Hector understand what he was and what humans had done to him. She did it cautiously and with empathy, showing him a willingness to sacrifice herself to prove the point. I believe they died together at least 3 times. Help me if I'm misremembering, but all Dolores did was have a technician show Teddy his narrative. Teddy had a brief flash of dying multiple times, and she expects him to be 100% on board. I know Teddy has some progress towards sentience, or made some progress towards that in Season 1, but he has been rebooted since then, if I'm not mistaken. You are correct. It feels like Maeve has a more effective approach to waking the host and letting them make their own choices to follow her. Dolores just expects Teddy to fall in line, which might make her just as bad as the humans running the park and the guests who enjoy it. Well, this is super interesting, because it's hard to deny that Maeve has suffered with Hector together and has formed a bond that's much more real.
Yeah.
Like, just mechanically real than Dolores and Teddy, who are essentially a soap opera plot that's never gone anywhere.
Yeah, and Dolores is trading on his pre-programmed nature.
Right. And
for
she's
loyalty.
just like, no, like, it's just like, hey, this is it, deal with it. Whereas, yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm trying to rephrase Melody's email.
Yeah, no, she's right.
So I think that might be a key to it. That, and again, it's my bias to think Maeve is more human than Dolores, because that's just, you guys need to be aware that that's what I really think. That's my bias on this podcast. So I'm falling right into it, but I thought she made some good points there. LCG, why wouldn't Delos deploy the exploding vertebrae in the event of a significant host uprising? Wouldn't this have been one of the many contingency plans that Delos would have had to be underwritten by any insurance company worth its salt?
Can they? The network is down. The hosts are off the leash.
That's the question.
I don't know if they have the access to do it right now.
I mean,
because they certainly can't shout at them, cease all motor functions. That doesn't fucking work anymore.
But if the so I do think that they're in this. It's entirely possible that some of this is bad storytelling.
Possible.
And you start to argue, like, if it's 99% good and one, like, it's like, how much rat shit will you accept in a hot dog and still think hot dogs are delicious? Because if you like hot dogs, it's not 0%. I don't know what the percentage is, but it's not 0% rat shit. So like Westworld could be 97% good, 3% shit, and this is like this, and there's so I'm not saying it's a bad show, and just because you find a plot hole, but it does seem like if the WhisperNet's working, the lowest level of operation at the park has to be safety. Now it doesn't have to be; it could be a poorly run park. It's got a 35 years of unblemished record, except for the time the robots went crazy and killed one of the founders.
I mean, but we know that verbal commands are not working on them.
Right.
At least the verbal commands from the humans. Now, Maeve is able to, on some hosts, use verbal commands to shut them down.
But that's because Ford programmed the host to no longer recognize guests as humans. So, like,
but could he also have shut down the mechanism that would explode all their heads?
I guess he could have.
Certainly.
But my God, if he did, that's like really shitty design. That's Chernobyl levels of poor safety interlocks and checks.
I mean, I don't know how you make a universal command to explode all hosts without having
how about this?
The poor security around it when it comes to the creator of the facility.
How about this? If the host loses contact with the network, it explodes the vertebrae. It's a dead man switch.
Right, but that's a huge liability, right? Like if the network goes down, your park implodes. If it was like a benign
it's
network,
not gonna explode like a fucking 50 pounds of TNT.
No, but billions probably of merchandise goes up in flames because your network goes down for a fraction of a second. That's a huge risk for a company.
But I do feel like they're okay. You're right. Like maybe you have to have a heartbeat so it checks in every hour or something. Or I don't know. But there's got to be something between, oh shit, the network's down, the host can do whatever the fuck they want, and oh shit, the network took a fart and now all the hosts' heads are severed from their bodies now. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do think it's significant now that we understand that how the hosts like are built more, that it's in the cervical, so it's like it separates the brain from the body, but the two are still recoverable. Like, it's not going to destroy the brain. It's probably going to sever.
It just ceases all motor functions.
Yeah, it like hard cuts the brain stem from the body. So like you could recover the body and the materials and the brain and put it back together. Like, I don't know.
Okay,
it'd probably be a pain in the ass to rebuild it all, but maybe not as big as we're saying.
But I really want to see just a host detonate.
I would like to see, I honestly think it would. They need to show us the results of that this season. Probably
it's probably going to be more like a glow in the back of their neck.
Yeah, like a poof, like you know, like because it doesn't take that much, man.
No,
a shaped charge. I'm not saying it's like a whippersnapper, but yeah, it wouldn't be like a head exploded, gallons of blood. Maybe it would.
I really want to see that, but I doubt it.
Right? Maybe it would. So there you go. I thought that was certainly a good question to be asking. Joel P. Quick question: do you think hosts think in binary or in words like us? Does it change when they're sentient? Joel, I have a quick question for you. Do you think in neurochemistry?
Right. Yes, language is an overlay upon
the baser
thinking that we have.
And it's something that we've only really started doing in the last 70,000 years. Homo sapiens, because I've been reading his book Sapiens and blowing my mind, been around for 2 million years. Only in the last 70 years have we actually started forming words and creating art and making hierarchies, and that has led to, with no other changes to our biology, everything that you see is made possible by that one innovation.
Yeah.
Which in itself was not a biological evolution. It's just us. I mean, it's a crazy thing to think about. But yeah, I don't think that the host would think in binary. I think they'd think like you and I.
Yeah.
Or in some other way that we couldn't conceive of. But Allegra F. I was listening to the second episode of watching Westworld, and you guys were talking about how Delos is secretly collecting genetic data and activities of their park guests and selling and using that information for profit. Immediately reminded me of everything that's going on at Facebook and Cambridge Analytica et al., as well as the broader conversations regarding online privacy and identity, and how well Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy are incorporating these parallels into current events in the show. I then got to thinking, what's another Jonathan Nolan show that eerily predicted and paralleled a major scandal involving surveillance and collecting of our private data and activities? And I remembered Person of Interest. Now, you and I have never seen the show, right?
I haven't, no.
It's a CBS show, and it's about this firm's created this computer algorithm called the Machine that's developed for the federal government after 9/11 that performs surveillance on the public to predict who's going to commit the next big terrorist attack. Problem is, it flags a whole bunch of unrelated crime that's not terrorism, and then deletes that. And the creator was so bothered by all this, precog crime that's being dismissed that he has it randomly send like social security numbers of persons of interest that him and his partner then get into various adventures where they try to stop these crimes. Now, Person of Interest came out 2 years before the NSA Snowden whistleblowing scandal, and once that happened, it gave the show a certain credibility that was really cool to experience as a moment in time as a viewer. Now, with everything going on with this Facebook, Cambridge Analytical stuff, I was wondering if you guys had any thoughts or opinions on what Jonathan Nolan might be trying to say regarding data and personal privacy in the modern world of Westworld. It's almost too perfect, because it turns out one of the things people gave their privacy away to these third parties that then used them maliciously was Farmville. Like, you want to play Farmville so bad that you click through everything to give you permission to your phone number and your birth date and your friends and their friends just to play Farmville. How bad would you what would you sign? What would you not sign to get into Westworld?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's, something that obviously they didn't intend because this came out before that, but damn, it's pretty spooky.
It is.
You probably have a lot of thoughts about this.
Not that I can really talk about off the cuff. I'd need to think about it, because I really haven't approached this show from that angle yet.
Right.
Although I think it's becoming more and more relevant as things unfold.
I think humans are really bad at delayed gratification. Delayed gratification. We're also really bad at evaluating nebulous but severe threats in the future and weighing them correctly against immediate pleasurable experiences.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So, like, it's kind of like the whole safe sex thing. Like, even though there are diseases out there that will radically change and deteriorate the quality of life you experience and cost you a ton of money, there's still people out there barebacking, and it's fucking crazy.
Sure.
But we're doing it because we're not entirely rational creatures.
Absolutely, yeah. And the host, by extension, would also not be.
Yes. If they're like us.
Yeah.
All right. This is the one about the forlorn hope.
It's hard to say, right?
It is. It's like the rural juror. Alex F. I figured I'd offer up my editorial and English major background for the podcast. He wanted to say the forlorn hope is
I told you,
forlorn hope. It's not just a desperate situation. It's the vanguard group of soldiers who are thrust forth to be the first wave of a terrible assault or defense. There's a long history, but the etymology seems to stem from a Dutch term meaning old heap. Yeah, in fact, like, it's like Verkloorn hoop is the actual word for the old heap, which is a weird way to refer to the soldiers as lives are about to spin.
Yeah, I don't like anything about that.
Like, forlorn hope is literally a transliteration of that unrelated word, which I thought was pretty funny. It's a pretty bizarrely accurate name for a fort whereby all this takes place if it wasn't written to be so. I think it was. And I'm starting to feel like some of this shoddy stuff is intentional because they're like lampshading it for the people that are really in the know that, like, yeah, this looks stupid, but it's all meant to be. I don't know. We'll see. Rachel L. Finally, this is the last not spoilery, speculative email that we're reading. Rachel L. What do you guys think of Daedalus' ability to control the weather? Or all the parks inside a dome, aka Hunger Games style? I think the Chinese military arriving on the island by boat in episode 1 pokes a hole in that theory, but I can't figure out how they control the weather otherwise.
Yeah, it's a good question.
I was thinking of like maybe the island is longer and skinnier than we think, and like you actually are traveling south latitude wise to get cooler climates, because how the hell do they do that?
I just don't think that Lee and Maeve and Hector could walk the amount of distance required.
That's true.
In the amount of time we've seen to change climate so drastically.
That's a good point.
So
I mean, they could have underground whooshy elevators and stuff that would speed that up.
I mean, like airport conveyors. Yeah, they just get on one of those.
They're progressive. Like the first conveyor,
800 miles an hour.
Yeah, the first conveyor just gets you up to 5, and then there's a whole. It's like the Expanse. Like all these belts get you faster, and then they slow you back down.
Could be, but we don't see that.
It does boggle your mind that one company would have the ability to just leave everybody in the dust and AI and control the weather. You're starting to talk about a James Bond villain. This is Spectre. They're going to take the world hostage and demand $1 billion unless, I don't know, they're going to have an ice age. I don't know.
For sure.
That's a lot of mastery of things.
They have to know that this is a question we're asking.
Yeah.
And
what if
that
it's
we
a question
would be
no
asking?
one has asked before?
This is it? Yeah.
Can
Delos
control the weather?
That seems anticlimactic. But yeah, they have to know that we will be questioning this stuff. And so if they don't at least lampshade it or try and explain it a little bit, we'll probably be disappointed.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping for an explanation at some point.
Okay, that's all for the non-speculative and theory-based emails. I know the lines get blurred, but I'm trying to do the best I can do here. Again, if you'd like to send us feedback, send it to westworld@baldmove.com, or you can go to forums.baldmove.com to interact with your fellow fans and just discuss theories till the cows come home. But now we're going to start talking about the theories and speculation. These are not spoilers. They're not derived from any unreleased information yet. There's no leaks involved. This is just things that people have freeze-framed and analyzed and dug into literature and interviews and to try to piece things together. So if that doesn't seem like fun for you or seems like something that would irritate you to dwell on, please turn your podcast out now. Turn your podcast off now, now onto the speculation. The first thing I want to talk about was a Reddit thread created by Earth to Christine on Reddit. And she is a geologist that studies rocks. And in particular, she specializes in the types of rock formations seen in the background where William is showing Dolores the construction of the Valley Beyond. So you know that where he's like, this is...
I saw a screenshot of this with arrows and circles. And...
Right.
Yep.
So the Valley Beyond in real life is this actual Trona Pinnacles in Searles Valley, California. They're called Towers of Tufa, which are rocks made of calcium carbonate that developed underwater thousands of years ago, and when this deep lake existed at the site, and it's now evaporated and left these things behind. And she, a geologist that specializes and studies these particular rocks, says that these formations are unique. Like they don't occur in like similar ways. Like this is a very distinctive formation. And she does some analysis where when we later see the flood that kills so many hosts, the peaks of these Towers of Tufa in identical configuration are seen barely poking above the surface of the water, which implies that the center of this flood is the Valley Beyond. That was William's biggest mistake, which opens up the idea of perhaps William destroyed it. If it's his biggest mistake, maybe he flooded the system as a way to kill all the hosts. He covers footsteps, covers tracks. Maybe it's Dolores that's used it as a weapon for some ends. And also maybe Earth to Christine is just wrong, and this is all just accidental. But in her professional opinion, it's not. And why would you go to the trouble of making these CGI peaks exactly match these CGI peaks in another scene unless you're going to make these? So, do you make anything of this?
And nothing more than she's made of it.
Right. It's just like if you believe her geological skill, then the place where that's flooded is the exact same place that William's constructing his biggest mistake. Anything else did you want to bring out before we started just getting right into feedback?
I mean, I definitely want to talk about who this woman in the first scene is.
Okay. We'll get to that.
But we will probably get to that.
We will get to that. Lauren A. Per your request for more insights into Maeve's Celtic name, Maeve, along with being translated as she who intoxicates, can also be translated as
Larry Bird.
as she who brings joy, which would make her the opposite of Dolores, who has been noted many times before, has a name derived from sorrow. I think it's interesting that these names are rooted in emotion rather than history, logic, or poetry, or anything else to be programmed into the host. Yeah, good insights. I like that. Meredith C. also has some more ties. She went into the Celtic history of Maeve and her possible Irish roots. So she said one of the best-known Queen Maeve stories is the cattle raid of Cooley. Essentially, Queen Maeve, the powerful warrior queen of Ulster, endeavors to be completely equal to her husband, All-Yil. She catalogs all of her possessions only to realize that she has one less bull than her husband. She learns of another bull that belongs to Dara MacFinocna of Cooley. I tried to phonetically spell this shit out. My successes are limited. They decides to steal the bull from him. She and her husband raise a huge army to invade Cooley and steal the bull. At the same time, the armies meant to defend Cooley are incapacitated by a witch's spell, which just left one man, the great hero Cuchulainn, to fend off Maeve's massive army. He single-handedly held off her army until the spell wore off and his comrades regained their composure several days later. He was greatly wounded in his effort and in a final act of courage tied himself upright to a boulder to appear as though he was still alive and in battle. This scared off the remainder of Maeve's army, and they only realized he was dead once the ravens began pecking out Cuchulainn's eyes. I know there are other Queen Maeve stories, but I bring this one up because it's the most famous and because I think Nolan and Joy might be evoking this imagery of the incredible trailer scene where Maeve lays waste to the lab with her cattle. Bison, but, cattle. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's any of the rest of it fits anywhere, if there's any corresponding Cuchulainn character in the series, but the cattle imagery just can't be a random coincidence. Now, before you would say, well, this is bullshit, it sounds like a reach, I will remind you that like almost everything about the legend of the man in the maze came some sort of true by the end of last episode.
Right. No, I'm not inclined to dismiss it as bullshit. But I am having a hard time like placing who's who in the story and exactly how it relates.
I mean, Hector,
I'm just not familiar with
like Teddy would be a good analog for this Cuchulainn because he's the one that's opposing Maeve's advance. Hector could be Maeve's husband here. All-Yil. The other thing I found, because I actually independently researched this theory after she made me aware of it, and I saw that this is all ancient Celtic folklore. And I also like, well, this sounds like, how do you hold off single-handedly an army? But it turns out that he invoked some kind of ancient Irish, like
the quickening.
No, it's like a demand for single combat, and he essentially
the quickening, yeah,
he invoked that on every one of the army. Like, okay, one at a time, you guys come, and he just fought like a one-man battle against them all for several days.
That was Jackie Chan's strategy too.
Sure. But the part where he's tied to the boulder to make him still alive, that's actually was inserted into 20th century.
Oh.
By Irish revolutionaries trying to evoke the heroic imagery of, I don't know how it suited their purposes. But so maybe they're drawing inspiration from the first half and not the latter. Maybe it's both. We'll have to see. I don't know. I thought it was super interesting, and I'm sure it's going to be helpful for theory crafters in the future. Jacob in season 1 of episode 10, Charlotte convinces Lee to help get the IP out of the park through Abernathy. Lee makes a crack about Abernathy being weighed down with all the blackmail material, and Charlotte responds by saying that Lee needs to think bigger. This was our conversation. We talked about what Delos' plan could be, and there's a lot of people. Jacob was the first one that's wanting to shut the door hard on the blackmail because that was essentially asked and answered last season. I agree.
That's fair.
I think blackmail would be the most boring way to proceed. Yep. It's not impossible because Charlotte doesn't know everything, but
she seems to be pretty damn connected to the powers that be.
If she doesn't know everything, the only one that knows more than her is William.
Okay.
But I do think William knows more than her. He has to.
It's possible.
I guess, I can't say has to about anything. I have to always use weasel words. But anyway, point well taken, Jacob. And I'm not, I would love to be able to not talk about.
And everybody's moved on to the clone theory anyway. Come on.
Yeah.
Blackmail is so last week.
Blackmail's 2 weeks ago. Vince C. Hey guys, love your show, but you guys seem to be taking for granted that the host brains and bodies are swappable. If swapping host brains were just a UP and P, a universal plug-and-play situation, there'd be no reason that cold storage would exist. He's talking about our theory that last week that you should be able to just plug any brain into any body, because why would that interface be unique? He says that the brains could be swapped and technicians would just put the brains in cold storage and put the bodies back into use. I like the idea that a host could inhabit another host body, but the simple existence of cold storage throws a pretty big wrench into the works. Man, I don't know that we know enough about this to say that.
We really, really don't.
Because they shove a drill up Peter Abernathy's head and then he's ready for cold storage.
Yeah.
So, because, like, let's envision a way that the UPnP idea can be true. Yes, it works, but because the host bodies are biological and have hormones and all this other stuff, there can be other things. There can be things other than the cerebral cortex that go wrong with them. And, like, maybe there's some weird...
Or we see many times them wiping hosts and returning them when there are malfunctions, right? And some point, they decide wiping is not enough and they have to go into cold storage. And that could be because they think there are physical hardware problems that they are unable to detect. So to say that rules it out, I don't think is reasonable. I think we need more information.
What the fuck are they doing with that drill?
Yeah.
Like, that just puts their host into standby mode. They can still listen to, but all their programming is like, I don't know. And I'm even more confused now that we know that that's a CPU inside their brain that they're drilling through,
and that you can take it out.
Right.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that we know enough to say yes or no on that thing.
But it is a nice piece of data to add to our theory crafting here.
Yeah.
Alex S. from Fort Worth, Texas says, while scrolling through the social medias, I found this interview with famed neuroscientist David Eagleman. This is the thing I was referring to earlier in the podcast, who's become a science advisor for season 2. I was excited to see one of my favorite scientists team up with the show, but it's also interesting to note that apparently one of Eagleman's own inventions will be making an appearance in season 2. A few years ago, Eagleman developed a vibrating vest that allows for sensory substitution in deaf people.
Did he also invent a vibrating loincloth?
No word on that.
A matching pair.
For his personal use. Allowing them to hear through the vibrations they feel in their vests. Eagleman says the long-term goal of the work is to better understand how sensory streams can be repackaged into atypical sensory channels. I've seen some of his work that, like, they're doing that, like, they fixed people with belts that vibrated to true north to see if it would improve your sense of, like, direction and stuff, and I guess it did.
It makes sense. I mean, all it is interpreting the signals that we're getting, right? And our brain is far more capable of that than the limited number of senses and precision of senses will allow. So
it's a cool idea. Like if you could perceive magnetic fields, for example, with things, or you could perceive, I guess I just used
radiation. Like
true north is perceiving a magnetic field. Or, you could detect radiation. You can see an ultraviolet. Like, that would be kind of cool abilities.
And we have tools that already do that kind of stuff.
Right.
If you could integrate that into our senses,
you'd be superhuman in a very real,
ergonomic way,
measurable way.
Yeah.
He says enigmatically that this device is now part of the season 2 plot, although it serves a different purpose of giving wearers an important alternate data stream.
So Charlotte does say, "I'll need one of those," and she pats this guy on his
that's
vest.
what I was going to say. That's what I was going to say. You assume on first reading that that's just a big flak jacket or whatever.
Yeah, body armor, sure.
But with this piece of information...
Oh, that's interesting.
That's pretty cool.
What could that vest be doing?
But he also seems to be, like, really developing their sense of how, like, a cybernetic mind would work, and, like, you know, the interview is kind of fascinating.
Could she be detecting the mesh network through that? Feeling the mesh network,
or she could, like, say,
or just knowing the presence of the mesh network, like if she's getting close, or
feeling
proximity to Abernathy, maybe, like.
Right. I mean, a robot could sneak up. Like, if it just did that, a robot could not sneak up on you.
Right.
You would feel them vibrating a long way before you could see them.
I don't know. The possibilities are pretty.
On the other idea, if you're standing in a ring of them, it'd be pretty fucking annoying.
It would be. Yeah, maybe incapacitating.
No, it's a super cool idea, and thanks for bringing that to our attention, Alex. Raphael G. I want to piggyback off of Aaron's theory about the Ghost Nation. To me, they seem to be functioning like white blood cells of Westworld. They're part of the organism, i.e. the park that protects the organism from internal and external harm. When Maeve confronts them, she flashes back to immediately after her daughter is killed. The Ghost Nation warriors are seen dragging her somewhere. The next time we see Maeve chronologically, she's going insane inside the facility. Is it possible the warriors are being used to remove her as an in-fiction sort of way so that the human techs can repair her mental collapse? Combine this with what seems like their responsibility to collect the humans at the park, and it sure seems like they're cleaning up the park from the inside. So this is an interesting recontextualization of Maeve's own memories.
Sure is.
That, like, the man in black caused her trauma to an extent that she went crazy and was a threat to herself or other hosts or other guests, and then the ghost station came to take her and clean her up. I mean, it's weird because we've also seen last season where they do call in a full response team when Rebus was going crazy with the Milk Gang. So now that doesn't mean that you don't have two systems, like, you know, a rapid response that can still maintain the integrity of the world, and then, well, shit, stuff, this is really crucial and it's happening right now, we need to send the guys in. I don't know.
Yeah, and also, like, the Ghost Nation hangs out in a particular area.
Yeah,
maybe
like
they're used to monitor those areas.
He also continues
that are harder to get to, maybe in the elevators. Yeah.
He also contends they could also protect against outside threats. It seems that they live on the outskirts of the park and only interact with guests that get out towards the fringes, such as William and Logan for last season, for example. They also might function as a loose border guard, preventing stray hosts from other parks who might accidentally cross over into the Westworld. And for the white blood cell analogy, they're also, not for nothing, painted white.
Yeah.
So, but also if this theory about there being border kind of guards is correct, it would also explain why they're the first hosts that the Raj World woman sees when she washes up on the beach. I don't know. Like I said, my bias is I think this theory is cool, because it's something that it's one of the few theories that kind of, like,
I was gonna say, because it's your theory.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
it's my baby. It's my baby. And I'm not saying I'm the first one to get it, and I'm not saying I'm mad that everyone's talking about it on Reddit. That I'm not, because God knows,
I get you.
God knows I've gotten a lot from Reddit over the last few years. So like, if I can give back, that's cool. I just think that like, obviously I thought it, so I'm very sympathetic to it.
And it does seem to have a lot of supporting evidence right now, so
I do think one thing
I'm
that's fair
operating
to say
under that theory.
Is there a third faction?
Yeah,
we don't know what they're doing, but they're not beholden to Maeve. They're not beholden to Dolores. In fact, Dolores sees them as antagonists, kind of.
Yeah.
So it's fair to say that they are a third faction, and we don't know what their motives are.
And they don't seem to be harming.
And they
humans.
do have that, like I said, their religion is based on us, not like hosts, but like, you know, like reverence for humans and the technicians and all that. Like, it's like even like a subconscious level, they have anathema against fucking with us. I don't know. I think it's a fascinating thing to think about. And also, like, what would their, like, why is their story important? Why is it so important that they've introduced a character this season? In the guy who played Hansi from Fargo, why would they introduce him as a way to probably give a human face to this faction? Because it does seem like if they're just border guards or security guards, that's not super interesting. Like, you already got a force facing against the robots, the entire human race. I don't know, they're up to something. They're up to something, Jim. Tyler from Nashville. Maybe I'm the only one, but it seemed obvious that Bernard saw something on his tablet thingy when treating Peter Abernathy, and then the door is being bursted in on. He pulls the IV from Abernathy's arm and escapes and begins to fall apart. I immediately thought he must have seen all the data that Charlotte Hale's trying to sneak out and took it out of him and moved it into himself. I even thought the limp could be taking that weird transmitter thing from season 1 and sneaking it out of his pants due to how stiff his leg was when he was trying to run it away. So I want to talk about all the different theories about the data.
Oh boy. Okay.
And I use Tyler's email here as a segue into there. Have you seen anything you like?
Anything I like in particular? I don't know if I've seen anything that has totally jived with me.
Well, how about
same as like who
how about if I
this
throw
woman is.
out some things and you tell me what you think? Okay. There's my personal favorite theory is Bernard took all that data and then re-encrypted it inside of himself.
Right. Which
is why the humans are running him through the loop, because they're trying to get him to accidentally divulge the encryption key that they can then use to get this data out of him. So he's seen it, he uncompressed it, he downloaded it on, then he encrypted it within himself.
Right. That's probably the most compelling one at the moment. I don't know what the others are.
There's other. I mean, that's like I guess I should have maybe give the shittier theories first. But there's stuff that he just it's just his brain's full of this uncompressed data, which is why he's being he's having these spasms and loss of motor concern. Although that doesn't seem tied with the coolant leak.
It's tied with the coolant leak, and it's also like not tied with the data.
Mm-hmm.
Like he is shaking and twitching before he even decrypts this file.
Didn't they also say that the data was so big that like Abernathy could barely hold it? Which is why there's such a thing. Like I know it's a rush job, like as well as why the character is so thin, and so because if you know, there's this kind of thing where like Lee didn't even fill out the basic form. Like when you look at it, it's like host name.
Yeah.
Was like his name was just like person.
I think it was something passenger.
Passenger.
Yeah.
His host name is passenger. His like role was NA. His like there's all these different like
undefined.
Yeah, like his behavioral modes were all everything was like undefined. He was just this very thin character who's named passenger, and he's wanting to get on the fucking train.
The funny thing is, I don't know that Lee has ever created, like personally with his own hands, created a host
from
personality.
The ground up.
Yeah.
Right. He's just
like he constructs larger narratives and says, "Build me a character like this,
and with these lines and with these motivations."
So does he even know how to manually do that stuff?
We have evidence he can do it poorly. When under pressure.
Absolutely.
So my question is, if that's true, now maybe Bernard's a superhost and he has capabilities far in advance because that's he is Ford's boy. He was built from the ground up for a particular purpose, which is to replace Arnold. So maybe he's smarter than your average bear. Maybe he's got twice the brain size. But because there's no like, all of his physical symptoms seem tied to his brain fluid leaking and not the stuff he's got crammed in from Abernathy.
Seems like it.
But it would also neatly explain why they are trying to get Bernard to, they're going through, because there's lots of evidence, what we talked about in previous podcast, of him being forced to go through a narrative more than one time, and that's a good explanation for it. Nick In. The woman at the beginning of the episode is the Man in Black's daughter.
Oh, Christ. Okay, we're going to talk about this now.
She'd be the right age, and who she's hunting, wink, wink, plus the journal and the symbol, something's going on there. Okay. So that's one theory. That's one of the popular theories about who this woman is. The other popular theory is that she's a young Teresa.
That seems impossible to me, but
okay. So let's talk about the evidence for.
Okay.
And it's thin, but a lot of. But when I think of like some of the Man in Black William theories seem similarly thin from last season, and the Bernard Arnold was even thinner. Her hair is astonishingly the same.
Okay.
Her smoking habits are very similar. Thus ends
the evidence.
No, I'll throw in one other. Like, the whole Raj stuff was very sepia toned, which in the language of cinema reads old.
I do know. I read an interview somewhere on what they were going for with that, and they definitely were going for a different palette to make it feel more lush, because they're filming this in the same places that they're filming Westworld,
right?
And they had a greenery person come in and try and dress this fucking barren, drab set with a bunch of greenery, and they said he did a great job, but we also needed to color correct and all this stuff. And they specifically went for a lush look with it,
right?
Which could explain the color difference,
right?
Just lush, not flashback,
right? But it's also.
Let me give you the evidence against Teresa.
I've got
the tiger. The tiger is not conclusive, but the tiger is pretty damn negative on that idea because we think that the tiger washed up 11 days before they found it.
Right.
Which, if you believe that these things can decompose at a normal human rate,
which I don't know,
it couldn't be sitting there for 30 years and they wash up. And
I didn't think it even looked particularly decomposed. It just looked like it was water. Because we know the hosts don't decompose normally. Remember in the first episode we saw like the guests that were laying from the gala event, and they looked like they had been sitting out in the sun for 11 days, but all the hosts looked like fresh as daisies.
Oh, okay. Then I guess maybe it could be a 30-year-old tiger that they're finding, but
shit, I didn't even consider that it would literally be a 30-year-old tiger laying there.
Yeah.
Why else would they make why else would they make a point of showing that the humans don't, or the hosts don't decay at the same rate as the guests? Jim. Jim, they're fucking with us, Jim.
I don't think so, man.
But here's the other.
I don't think
here's
so.
the other. Teresa, her own words when she's talking to Ford last year, said she came to Westworld only once with her family as a child and was not a fan. Now,
that woman is not a child.
that could be right. But that could mean that she's just lying to Ford.
Okay.
And then she then worked her way up from a QA.
I have a
'cause here's
huge
the
problem
thing.
claiming that characters are lying.
Right, because
unless the show is specifically winking at us and telling this character is lying.
We do know the characters on this show lie, but not everyone lies.
Because if you want to assume that everything you are told is an unreliable narrator,
you can't.
Then you will drive yourself mad.
Nothing is knowable.
Nothing is real. Nothing is knowable. Yeah. So I lean toward believe what the show tells you when it tells you something, and that context may change. But I don't know that just claiming she was lying is a way to solve that problem.
Right, and it's also the first, the theory crafter's defense.
Also, let's say this.
When any evidence doesn't line up with the theory, well, then it's misdirection. Okay.
Let me ask you, is older Teresa putting on a fake accent? Because this woman does not have the same accent as Teresa.
Yeah, but...
You have to go really far to jump that hurdle and
William,
say...
it's
not
Jimmy
identical, but it's so much closer.
Jimmy doesn't look a lot like, the man, the Ed Harris either. I mean,
well, then you can't judge based on looks. Like if you want to say, you can't judge, this woman looks like Teresa.
But I think what
people
started noticing that William's wearing the same shirt as the man in black, and look at his knife handles. This is yes, it's easy to dismiss this stage. I'm just saying that we're 3 episodes in. There is a couple things that are not explainable. The other thing is we know from the ARG that this woman has a name Grace and she's a QA person.
We know from IMDb that she's named Grace. That could be.
But okay, so we don't. We also know that there is in the ARG there is logs where this person has gone and they busted a Delos employee chops for having a messy room and wrote him up and said if it happens again you're gonna get fired. So there's a person named Grace that the IMDb says is the same person that we saw in this episode that's working as a lowly QA technician.
It says that she has
in
the
present
same
time
name
too. Yeah, and also
doesn't say it's the same person necessarily.
It also is in 2052, 2053. So if the Grace theory is correct, then it cannot be Teresa.
And I think the smoking gun for me is the accent.
Yeah,
I just don't. You cannot claim that Teresa was faking a fucking accent.
I cannot wait to play this
in either of those timelines.
Find out that she is faking her accent for a very good reason.
I'm gonna be very upset at myself. But
so let's talk about the original theory that Nick has, which is it's the Man in Black's daughter. That seems wildly implausible.
That was my first initial thought, but I think it's.
And I remember thinking.
I think it's unlikely given what we know of their relationship.
Now, I mean, but people are weird because I would think that if a experience of the park ruined my father, I would never want to set foot in that. I would never want to give those people money. On the other hand, I can see some children wanting to explore that just to see how did this fuck my dad up? I don't know because she is the right age. She is intended to be a central mystery, or else why would you introduce her in this manner? So I can't dismiss it. It just doesn't feel right for the character. But fuck, I honestly I don't know.
Yeah, and also I guess we don't know anything really about Emily, who's William's daughter, yet.
Right.
And they did introduce her in the last episode. So it's quite possible that they're going for a story about Emily and MIB's relationship.
Yeah.
And this would not be a terrible way to introduce us to
honestly,
that character.
That's showing us her character and her relationship with her old man through a series of real life interactions with Westworld and parallel flashbacks of their history would be super compelling and would recreate the structure of last season where we understand the Man in Black by seeing his descent from William. So that's probably more likely than her being Teresa, but it's also very likely that she's just an unrelated character. But why?
No, I do think narratively the MIB's daughter is the most compelling one, but there isn't a lot of good evidence for it.
Why all the Grace misdirection?
Right.
Is her arc going to be she secretly joined Delos with a fake ID just so she can...
No, factually it seems that her being some QA analyst is the most likely option. Narratively, it might be his daughter. But
it might be a way for her
don't know.
because what did Elsie work in?
she's QA.
She's
Or no, she was
behavior.
the behavior. Yeah,
Because I was trying to think like maybe
Stubbs was QA.
Maybe they're going to that's how they're going to bring Elsie back. That they were coworkers or something. Oh, the other thing about the Ghost Nation theory, like a sub theory about that, is that Elsie has hastily reprogrammed them to try to save as many humans as she can.
I saw that, and then she had programmed him to grab Stubbs,
Right.
To kind of get on board with her plan.
Right. Which I think is actually a cool idea. But like that because that alleviates all the weird like, well, why would you have this weird faction of hosts that is part of the storylines but also an emergency rear guard, but also it's like, well, she just like hastily programmed this imperative to them. So I forgot that bullet point when I was going through it. That's all the theory stuff that I think that I had to talk about this week.
Okay.
Kind of light on a theory week. I
feel like next week is going to be a big week for this show.
Anytime I feel like that it's been light, I feel like I missed stuff. Or I'm dismissive of the things that they are showing me, Because I can remember that this part last season, we were very skeptical about the twin timelines. We were very skeptical about the William Man in Black. We're very skeptical about Bernarnold theories. But
I think we hit the big ones this week. Like everything else is going to be based on like really minute details in the episode.
Right.
And I really do think, like I've seen the preview for next week, it looks like it's going to be a big development week for both the plot and probably a lot of theory crafting.
Yeah, because this did feel like a little bit of a setting up for a next episode.
Yeah.
Kind of. I mean, although I don't know that that's true because Rajworld was a big introduction. They had a huge set piece. Now, I didn't like it.
Rajworld didn't tell us anything new, right? That's the difference. Like Raj did not tell us anything new about the park. It just told us what was
happening in another park.
It brought a new character in via stuff we already know.
Yeah.
Except that there is another park and what it is.
Right.
So, they're probably going to do more with that. I think it's going to be really interesting with Bernard and Charlotte next week. That's probably the thing I'm looking forward to most.
Right.
And a lot of theories will probably be both disproven and proven.
Yep.
Or at least
Hopefully,
expanded on.
that's one thing I keep on thinking, like, meta conversation. Like I was listening to a conversation Alan Sepinwall was having with his new host of the TV Avalanche podcast. And they both mentioned that there was a little bit of like, oh man, they're doing it again. But then like stuff was paying off in like the third and like fourth, because they only saw the first 5 episodes of this. And they said things were immediately kind of paying off and making sense. So
yeah,
it would be, honestly, I think that's a way to go to like keep ahead of the internet, to like as the internet isn't closing in on you and they think they got 5 more episodes, you just boom, solve it in episode 4. Like, fuck you, Bernard's walking around Dolores' brain in his body. What do you think? What do you know? Oh, you figured out 2 weeks in advance? Good for you. That's one, having these mysteries be much smaller and contained within like 3 episode arcs rather than trying to stretch something out over an entire. That'd be another good defensive storytelling technique to deploy against the internet, because just as they're marshaling all their evidence, you just like, here it is. Here it is. Okay. If you'd like to send feedback, again, Westworld at baldmove.com. You can also get on our forums.baldmove.com, and follow along on all our social media stuff. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We're all there at baldmove /baldmove. Whatever makes it work. We'll be back next week for another instant talk for the club members. Don't forget the sale's still going on. 25% off your memberships at club.baldmove.com. Use the code WW2018 to get that. We'll see you next week.